Hi, and welcome everyone. Today I have the pleasure of having Anahita Joon Tehrani with me. Anahita is a 20-year veteran in the field of personal development. She is a visionary, an earth advocate, a shaman priestess, and an embodiment muse. So welcome, Anahita. It's so exciting to have you here for this conversation.
Thank you, love. Thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here. Greetings, brothers and sisters.
Yes, absolutely. I almost don't know where to begin. There's so much we could start talking about, and we will. But let's start with your background a little bit, your journey, your own awakening journey, which I know is still in process, and some about the work that you're doing in the world to help others along this path.
Wow, that is such a big and wide question. It seems like now my own journey, it really starts with being born and raised in Iran during the Islamic Revolution. It's only become clear as I've become older, and also as I progress more deeply into my service with others and the people that are attracted to me, to see how much of the oppression that I lived with became my journey of seeking for permission and aliveness and greater connection to my source. And so that's like the really general broad stroke of my journey. And then, there's been all these steps along the way, like Dark Night of the Soul really early on, 21, and then being initiated into some states of ecstasy by the Divine Mother, and kind of then being set forth on a path of really following the guidance of the Divine Feminine and allowing it to guide my life. And along the way, my ego completely dismantling and all ideas of who I thought I was supposed to be in the world crumbling. And so forth and so forth. And along the way, a lot of incredible teachers, some of, having the opportunity to study with some of the masters of our time, and some well-known and some not well-known at all. And, I feel like the broadest way I can say what I do is to serve love. That's like what we're all doing here. But how it looks is that I work with women primarily. My husband and I do some stuff with co-ed, but I work primarily with women who are really wanting to live in the paradigm of getting off the rat race, first of all, and really creating from a different place, creating from the place of knowing that they already are everything, that they already are everything, they have everything. And we really use the path of embodiment and Shakti and accessing the wild woman archetype and embracing our unique beauty. And so it's a really luscious journey that, most women love to say yes to. And I'm honored to do it.
Yes, and of course, the Divine Feminine is such an impactful and necessary and important part of what we see as part of this shift that's happening now. I mean, in so many ways, on so many levels, she's coming back in and she's showing up in us, through us, around us. And I just got chills when I said that. Mm-hmm. It's connecting into that energy again. This has happened so many times, but especially in regards to the Divine Feminine, because she's so potent and so there now. And it's just, I think in many ways we're all reconnecting and learning how to identify her and to honor her voice within ourselves, male or female bodies. It's the Divine Feminine is moving through. And so we can look at it individually, we can look at it community, we can look at it Gaia. There's lots of different ways to kind of feel her coming back in. And I know you just got back from Glastonbury, England, which is, if I'm not mistaken, the heart chakra of the world?
Yeah.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that with the Divine Feminine and what you were sensing and experiencing there.
Yeah, I did just get back. I was on my annual pilgrimage that I go to. And, I want to say it's like our survival depends on this rise of the feminine. And it's really the feeling, intuitive, heart resonance aspect of us. So of all of us. And that's why our survival depends on it, because we have relied so heavily on the mind to build industry and capitalism and destroyed so much of the earth in our pursuit of industry. And so to me, it's so perfect that Glastonbury has so much goddess energy. And, it is the heart chakra of the planet. It's considered that Maui also has a similar vibration, but Glastonbury has been that frequency for a long time. And, you know, if anyone's read like the Mists of Avalon and those legends of King Arthur and, you know, even like the ancient pagan and druid religions, they go to that part of the world, and that specific land has a very specific frequency. And it's just, you know, it is the frequency of the heart. It's a feeling, creative, intuitive, you know. And I went there to work on a writing project. Funny enough, I couldn't write. I was getting a lot of downloads. I have all these notebooks full of notes, but couldn't exactly write the way that I thought I would write. But there was a lot of creativity coming forth. And so, you know, what's amazing, what I love about being there is that the goddess is still recognized. And she is, you know, we talk about the goddess in different ways in different parts of the world. Like, you know, I used to live in LA, and LA has a very sensuous, like, expression of the goddess. She's very like this, and I love that, you know. And Glastonbury, the energy of the goddess that people are relating to is very earthy. It's very much connected to the earth. It's very much the Gaia goddess, like the mother goddess. And the way that someone talks about the goddess, I mean, it's not like this word. It's like so real. It's so resonant. It vibrates through your whole being. And what's so amazing too is, you know, what I love about going there is that creativity is just like bursting forth in a way that I've actually never witnessed in such a small, condensed place. Like the things that people create, the art, the artists, the fashion, the jewelry, like the everything, the alchemy, the lotions, the potions, like everything is just the creativity that is creation. Like Gaia creates, she creates what, you know, thousands of different kinds of one beetle. You know, how many, she never says, oh, I'm done with the flowers, I'm not going to create another flower. It's just like, you know, bursting forth. And so that, I love that there's so much of that there. I don't know if I just answered, I feel like I just went all over the place in my excitement of Glastonbury.
No, I followed you, and I love what you said, because you're encapsulating all of those feminine elements, or a lot of them, having to do with that location and the process that we're going through and this conversation right now. And I can't help but think of, when we're talking about the feminine energies of Gaia and our mother and the relationship to ourselves and our hearts and all of this, the shaman pathway, for example. I mean, the shamanistic approach in essence is very feminine in terms of the processes and the experiences that you go through with the true, like, shamanic connections, or I'm not even sure the word, but yeah, the process of it. So that's something too, getting back to the shaman's ways, the feminine ways. I mean, give me some ideas and thoughts of what you've seen with this, because this, I think, is one way to see kind of a portal into more of this experience and an expression of where we're going on this path.
I'm gonna try to answer that as best as I can. You know, I want to say I was telling someone the other day about the prophecy of the condor and the eagle. You know, and it's an ancient prophecy of thousands of years old. And I first heard it from one of my somewhat early teachers about 11 years ago. I was studying with John Perkins, who's one of the founders of the Pachamama Alliance. And that's when I learned about this prophecy. And the prophecy says, so the eagle represents the masculine, the mind, the strategy, and the condor represents the heart, the feeling, the intuitive. And the prophecy says that basically about 1490, at the beginning of 1490, the year 1490, these two energetics would begin to really go in separate ways. And that the energy of the eagle, really industry, would begin to destroy the condor. And that's kind of like what we have seen, you know, even with Columbus and a lot of the early explorers, just kind of really pillaging the earth. And then the prophecy also says that in the early 1990s, that there will be an opportunity for these two energetics to get back together and fly harmoniously together in the sky. And I just got goosebumps as I said that. So I'm sharing this because it talks about, the prophecy says we have the opportunity to. Not that it's a guarantee. And this is for me what's so enlivening about the times that we live in, and the work that we all have the opportunity to do, because we are saying yes to our own survival. We're saying yes to our continued aliveness, to continuing aliveness for our planet and our children. It's as we say yes, as we keep unplugging. So I wanted to share that just because we were talking about the shamanic aspect. So how did I answer your question? Tell me before I go any further.
Well, the way I heard it was some great context.
Mm-hmm.
Put
yes,
a good framework around the different things that I kind of threw at you there. There was just, that was free flowing through my mind as I was asking you. And so you were able to put kind of a nice container around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And we have so many, I mean, it's like, again, like on the West Coast and in some parts of America, it's very progressive. Certainly in America now, like cannabis has become a major contender as a healing ally plant for a lot of people, where for so many years it was squished down. And so these are some of the ways that, you know, the feminine and the shamanic aspects of our connection to our plant allies are coming forward. You know, and you see documentaries about ayahuasca and iboga and all these different, you know, there's a lot going on in Costa Rica, the countries that do allow, and there's also a lot of the religions that you know, have established their churches in the state so that people can connect to the plant intelligence, which really opens, for me, what I think that working with the plants really allows is to truly step out of the mind, which is the masculine. It's very contained, you know, it's like no matter how brilliant somebody is, the mind can only take us so far. And it's the feeling aspect that that is kind of how the plants work with us, because they work with the emotional body, and that's the opening. So there's so much happening, and there's so much available, you know, and as we speak, you know, I'm in Colorado, and the state has been one of the very first to support people's access to plants. And now it's increasing and increasing. And I think this is all a part of it, you know, being able to take how we heal ourselves versus medicate ourselves, you know, yes, by turning towards the natural offerings from the earth versus the pharmaceutical industry that is really designed to just perpetuate the illness and the symptoms.
That's a beautiful example of what I'm talking about with the plant medicine, the cannabis and what have you. And it brings to mind the general subject of medicine, the different ways that we derive and engage with medicine in our lives, whether it's a connection with the nature, whether it's ingesting nature, whether it's, there's a lot of different ways. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, because that's such the essence of the feminine coming in and becoming more available, and us connecting. And again, we've got communion, community, connection. All of this is feminine. And it just all coalesces together to bring us to a higher level and more of who we are as part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a big part of it is again, being able to access our emotional body, our feeling state, the place where we receive, to be able to know where we receive our medicine from. Like each person has their own unique medicine. I have a medicine that I bring into the room. You have a medicine that you bring into the room. There's a group, the two of us together, we have a different medicine that we offer when we're together, right? And just in case anybody, I mean, I feel like we didn't say this, maybe we should have said this. We're actually really good friends and get to share a lot of our growth journey and service journey together. So we do actually experience what our medicine is together and as individuals. And it's even like a school of thought or nature, as you said, even different parts of the earth, like one state versus another state, the mountain versus the river, to be able to attune to receiving the unique medicine of how you are soothed by something, how we are affected, how a person, a place, an element, an energy is being a soul ally to us, to assist us to go to where we want to go, to become more ourselves and release the untruths. It's like it requires breathing and sensitivity. You know, it requires really dropping out of the mind to be able to receive what's always here. You know, it's I think our pets is one of the easiest, most accessible way for most people, because everyone's already kind of in their heart with their own animal fur family. And so that's a really great entrance, I feel like, to being able to practice receiving the medicine of someone or something, because it's like you love your dog, you love your cat, whatever pet you have, you know, the ability to just tune into the unique nurturing, healing, that you receive from that being, the love, the connection, where that touches your soul and how it assists you to be more of yourself. That's such a great way to practice, to like the muscle, to then be able to take that into nature, to different relationships. Yeah.
That's a great point, because almost everyone is familiar at some level with their pets. That doesn't seem too far out for most people to grasp. They know they love them. They know they have a connection. In some level, they're communicating with them, some more than others. But that's not so outlandish to think about that if someone's just coming into this awareness about what we're talking about. And then, as with everything, you can take that to a deeper level and a greater expansion. I mean, if you just look at some of the reports that are scientific and medical these days about the healing power of animals in hospitals, how petting your cat will reduce your blood pressure, lower your blood pressure, things like that. I mean, these are widely accepted things, and they're only the surface, because there's so much more involved with that, with animals, and the way we speak to them and the way that they speak to us. And animals also, I had a really great interview with a woman named Trisha Carr, and she's an animal communicator. And we were talking about this because animals, not having the cerebral cortex that we do, you know, they're not in that part of their mind. They're more elemental. They're closer to source. They are more connected. So if we connect with them, that's an obvious way to bring that part of our world, you know, into familiarity with ourselves. That's just one great example of that. And then that extends to plants, flowers, trees, streams, rocks, rivers, all the things you're talking about, the stars at night. I mean, it's really amazing once you start opening up to all of these things. And that opening occurs, of course, when you start dropping the restrictions and the limitations and basically the fear and separation from around your heart, because that's what allows us then to open much more vulnerably and raw and sensitive way, like, to all of these things. And that's what I've seen a lot on my journey. That's been the miracle part. That's been the beauty and the like the oneness feeling that is such a amazing part of this experience.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I know you have such a beautiful connection to nature, and it's so lovely to kind of share in your connection and the uniqueness of it. And it's, you know, what you said is so key about dropping out of the fear and the separation to be able to connect. And unfortunately, we are so many of us, so much of the time are in a heightened state of fight or flight. We are in all of this fear that's unprocessed, that is, you know, it's just like we just get hyped up, and we push and we push and we push. Again, it's the value on the industry and the doing and you know, the caffeine versus, you know, the caffeinated state versus the non-caffeinated state. You know, I was talking to a client who was really kind of going through an emotional space, and she was just feeling so down on herself for not being in the doingness. And it was like, but this has to happen, because basically, because we're so removed from nature and we're so removed from our wildness, our ability to roar and scream and crawl on the earth. I'm not just saying walk barefoot and let out one scream, but to growl and crawl up the trees, like the wildness. We've been so tamed. And so if we don't have practice, we have, like, say everyone goes to the gym, they lift weights, they go to yoga. But if there isn't a way to release the wildness, to release the fear in a primal way out of the vessel, then to be able to then have that connection, often what happens is people get sick.
Yes.
Or people are forced to figure out a way to do that through what happens to their bodies. So I know that you know this, and I know that we value it. And I'm sure that a lot of our viewers, everyone who's watching also knows this. And I mean, I'm saying it, and I don't always get to do it because I live in a city and I have things to do, you know, but, oh man, you know, I was in Glastonbury and that during this past full moon, and I just wanted, and I was in a B&B, and I was scared to go out at midnight by myself because I didn't have a flashlight. I just had the flashlight on my phone. but I was just so ready to go out and howl at the moon. And anyway, I was able to go out 2 days later and howl in the woods because I just really needed to. It was just this part of me that needed to have space and permission. And yeah, so when I was doing that, then the leaves looked different and the tree bark looked different. And it was like I became one with that element a lot more than when we hold ourselves in this separation of, we have so much to do, we have so much to become, we have, so much to work out over here. And we're in this state of contraction and fight or flight. These are all just the things that are a part of our lives. And so honestly, I think it really, like 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes a few times a day can do wonders of just a little bit of like shaking and growling and breathing heavily and moving the body, just so the fear that is, all you got to do is turn on the news. My husband just said there was another shooting in Paris last night, and I just come out of a meditation and I was like, I'm going to wait till tomorrow to read that, because I had just kind of been in this really beautiful state of gratitude and knowing that, we're moving in the direction that we need to be moving in.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. But
well, it's funny too, because he said that, and I'll just say this, Paris, the city built for ISIS. Paris. So if anyone watching doesn't know this, the city Paris is para-ISIS. That was the name of the city, para-ISIS, for ISIS. The city built for ISIS. The city is built on a golden spiral. And so it's like, yeah, the goddess is under attack. It's a very real thing. And this is just the final dance of the duality. And we shall see. We shall see what we are able to become together.
Yeah, thank you for adding that piece. That is significant. And it's good that people begin to connect these, learn some history and connect some of these dots symbolically of what's happening besides just what they see on the news, because it starts to form a more whole picture of what's going on.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, here's the other thing. So I'll show you this. These are just all the things that I'm kind of tracking globally. I want to show you. So I was just in England, as you know. Oh, it's not here. Well, I'll just talk to you about it. Oh, here it is. So I was just in England, and they have these magazines that we don't have. And here's the thing. Okay, so I'm going to show you these magazines, and I'm going to tell you why I'm talking about this. So this is one magazine. Okay, and I love this magazine. It's very like new agey. I used to love it a little bit more, but now I'm kind of really taken with this one.
Ooh, nice.
So they have these magazines that we don't actually have in the States. I don't experience anything, we're like the advertising in this magazine is so profound and beautiful. Like if the couple of ads that are in here are like offerings and of service and so beautiful. And so I was just feeling this at the airport. Okay, so what's going on? Okay, so England is actually a matriarchal society. They have a queen. Mm-hmm. However, it's being played out in the shadow because they're so highly repressed.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So not the woman in Glastonbury, but there was a woman I met at a cafe in Glastonbury who had just come down from London, and she was telling me how repressing everything feels, and what like the people around her are like, what it's like for her trying to break free. And so I was just thinking about it. It's just so funny that they have the matriarchy, but it's still, so it's like, that's the energy in England. And then here's the energy in France, where we have the city built for ISIS, right? And then here's the States and who we have in our White House. And his relationship to the feminine. Mm-hmm. And it's like, these are all just pieces that make the whole. It's just really interesting to notice for me.
It is very interesting. And, I've lived around the world, so this kind of global viewpoint is fascinating to me. And I've picked up these things along the way too in my own life and on my own path. So to me, this is absolutely relevant because we can kind of draw out of our own experience individually. Of course, it's directly related, but just to get this other perspective of what's going on. And to me, that gives me a more holistic relationship to what's happening, to notice these other levels and energies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say even, I'm from Iran, as I shared, and even connecting to some of the women from there, it's like there's so much pent up rage and anger. I mean, what I'm experiencing a lot of, in connection to the women who are still living there, is a lot of the shadow of the feminine being played out, because so much repression has become turned into this anger that is now highly manipulative, highly wild and vindictive, because the wildness has had no place. And so these are, and this is just, I feel like, so in a lot of ways such an amateur way of speaking about it, because obviously I'm not traveling to every country around the world and researching their relationship to the goddess, or how the roles of women are playing out in their society, but it's certainly interesting to look, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
wow.
Yes. And then your particular connection to Iran is with that extreme on the spectrum is, I think, very valuable, because it gives, we can talk about Glastonbury and the beauty and the expression and femininity, but then you put it in context with Iran, and then it starts to give, again, it's this better kind of context that we can kind of play within and see how things are on going out. And I think we could easily have a whole interview just about that dynamic right there alone and go into that, because there is so much in terms of culture and history and the feminine and the masculine. I mean, to me, that's particularly fascinating. So I'm glad that you brought that up too, in terms of where we are with it.
Yeah. It's definitely, I remember again, one of my early teachers, John Perkins, saying during some of those trainings, because it was in the 90s, but it was the early 2000s when I was studying with him. And so that was just the beginning of this new era where the eagle and the condor could fly together. And he kept saying, we're living in such incredible times. We're so like that we can be here now. And I was young, right? So I was in my early 20s, and I was very drawn to what I was studying, but I was lacking what can only come with life experience and sometimes age. And now I really feel that. I feel, there are just times where it's like, wow, just to be alive at this time, and I heard Andrew Harvey said, can you show up and do what needs to be done, even if your own survival is not guaranteed.
Wow.
Like, and that it's like that call for all of us to do everything that needs to be done, even if tomorrow is not guaranteed or next month is not guaranteed.
Right. And that speaks to the authenticity of our own calling. And that's a powerful, I don't know the word, but it's like it pulls you in. Once you taste it, it's there and you don't forget it. You can fight and kick and scream or go through dark nights, but it's there and it will always be there. And I think that speaks so perfectly to what you've been through, what I've been through, what our listeners are probably going through to some extent. It's that calling and that shedding of what is inauthentic and inintegritous and what doesn't work. I mean, I see this all around, and it's the most beautiful thing. Sometimes Kali steps in there, speaking of goddess. I mean, sometimes that doesn't look so beautiful, but she's clearing the way for this to all happen.
Yeah. None of it looks like what we want it to look like. That's what's so amazing. Like what I was saying, I'll share this with everyone watching, when I said that I had that sort of initial awakening, an initiation, I was being woken up in the middle of the night, I was 22 years old and drenched in sweat and having orgasms and sort of sacred poetry coming out of my fingertips. And so a couple of years, happened of me, living and really following the divine feminine and listening. And I was like, just young and could live on very little and kind of just do my thing. But I was having so many downloads. Here's the funny thing. I just want to talk about the dismantling and that it doesn't look like what we want it to look
Sure.
like. So I was having so many downloads, and I just remember saying to Marianne Williamson, who I was studying with her a little bit and kind of following her around, I just feel like, and I was trying to explain, she said, what do you feel like? Like you need to write a book? And I was like, and she said, okay, well, we'll just bring the energy down and try to live it first. And I was kind of annoyed because, I felt like, she wasn't like telling me, go write a book. And so I was like, oh. And then, but I was having all of this download of the feminine, of the wild feminine, about our sexuality, our aliveness, our bodies, the wild, like all of this was just coming in. And anyway, so I was guided, funny enough, this part, so I was guided to go to DC and be with my mother. My mother, who I had not, who had left when I was growing up. And it was really like, I felt a real, like, oh, I need my mother, like my mother, the mother, whatever, that connection. So I was going back to DC, and I know you know this story, but it's just so funny to me now. I had a job that was lined up, and like funding for the job fell through, and I went, and a couple of weeks go by, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get a waitressing job. I'm 24 years old. Gotta make some money until I figure out another job. That job was in women's rights, the one where the funding fell through. And I'd always been a hardcore activist, from Iran, all that. And I went to get a waitressing job, and I walked into a place that ended up being a gentleman's club. And it looked like a steakhouse, even though I was a vegetarian at the time already. So anyway, I walk in and was kind of like, oh my God. And I was familiar with that kind of place because I was always kind of like, what is this? But anyway, the short of the long of it is, the owner was like, oh, would you like to dance? Because I asked for a waitressing job, and he said, would you like to dance? And I was like, well, let me think about it. And I went home, and I was just really praying, like, because it wasn't a clear no. It was kind of like, well, maybe. And in my meditation, it was so clear what I was getting was, you'll go dance, and you will send this freedom back to your ancestors, and you will send it to every woman in Iran. And I had to say yes. And it was such a profound assignment to be on, and I remember literally like every single time I walked into the club, I was like, this is directed and sent. And I was deep in my spiritual study. So I had a very, I feel, unique experience. It was kind of like there was a lot of shadow, but it was mostly a temple-like experience for me and what I was doing there. And it was kind of a very unique PG-13 situation. But what was so hard about it is that, I come from such an academic family. I'm an only child of professors, and I'd been an activist. And so what was happening is who I thought I was supposed to be. Like, I thought then that I should be doing the work that I do now because I'd had all the downloads. And so it was really, really hard for my ego, to tell like my friends what I was doing. And I didn't, honestly, for a long time. I just kind of lived my, yoga teacher life, and this life was over here and nobody knew about it. And then the assignment was over, but ultimately it created me to be a different person that actually I don't, when I compare myself to some of the women in my family or some of the women in Iran that I know, the amount of aliveness and freedom and permission that I allow myself to live with every day is, I know that it's like just not even possible to them because of the repression and the oppression. And so the reason that I wanted to share this is, first of all, just to say that it doesn't always look like what we want it to look like, and to hopefully encourage our brothers and sisters to travel the path least traveled, to take the road less traveled, to, just really listen and become your ancestors' answered prayer. So really become who we all know that is just our unique expression of freedom. And I guess I was supposed to share that here.
You were, and I know why. It's such a beautiful example and expression. Well, it's such a beautiful example of expressing out of repressing. Right? I mean, to break it down to the simplest, most fundamental aspect, you were in your particular situation doing the opposite of what had suppressed you in your culture, in your family. And here you were. And that was, I mean, talk about freedom and sensuality and wildness, and even the pole as the masculine, the groundedness, the staff, so that you could be the feminine and expressing chaotically and wildly and beautifully around that pole. I mean, the act itself, there's so much symbolic nature in that. And then personally with your family, the way to express and to break those chains or break down those blockages of having to be small and repressed. I mean, that's an expression of the feminine, and that's exactly what you needed to step more fully into who you are today. So it's a perfect example.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. And yes, to the doesn't look like you think it's going to look kind of thing, because you just don't know. And I think the best thing is the more aware we are of our own intuition and voice and guidance, no matter what, the more we can become attuned to that and more aware of what that is within us, excuse me, that's our guide. No matter what it looks like on the outside or what is correct, academic, I've been through that too. It's like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is your family. This is what is expected. This is where your worth comes from. This is how you will be loved if you perform in this certain way.
Yeah.
And all this is stuff that, I mean, if it serves, it serves. But if it doesn't, and for a long time, I think it has to break down for the other to come through. And then the next stage, I found at least, is a reintegration on a much more higher and more harmonious level of the two. It's not that we get rid of that forever, but that becomes in service to the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah, really beautifully said. And it's like what you're saying is like the proving worth and the, climbing the ladder. It's like just really good to ask, whose life is it anyway? Whose life am I living? Who's telling this narrative, And the one thing too, I want to say, just because of my, we were talking about Mother Gaia, and as I just shared a little bit of my journey, the dance journey, it's the body is the feminine.
Yes.
It's like, we can talk about it until the cows come home, but you got to just get up and dance and crawl. And like this is the earth's body. This is Gaia. Like, so to me, and that's why that's such a big part of my path and how I teach and how I serve, is the sensuality and the aliveness and the wildness in the body, because our aliveness is her aliveness. Our deadness is her deadness. So if we want to just sit at computers for 10 hours a day, if we want to be stationary, if we want to just eat the things that don't support our aliveness, it's like just to really, really recognize there is no separation. And yeah, I just wanted to say that.
It's funny. You literally just read my mind. You read my mind, because it popped in and I saw the word body and I thought, oh, I want to ask her about body. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because the body being our temple, we talk about 3D, 5D. We talk about different ways. There's like new languaging coming out about how to make sense or describe or kind of give context to the experiences we're having. And that's one way to do it. The spirit versus the body. It shouldn't be a versus. And I want to just emphasize that how sacred and holy our bodies are.
Yeah.
Right? And then the acknowledgement of that, and then the expression of that, letting that divinity and authenticity move through us. I mean, that is a divine act in itself. It's I'm getting to, oh my God, I feel that when I'm talking about it. It's like, whoosh, that is powerful.
It is. Yeah, it's true. It's the spirit and then the body, and how do they really come together? And what I find is the place where they don't come together. For someone who's very spiritually connected, when they're resisting being in the body, I find that it's usually has to do with shame around desire, shame around sexuality and desire, because it's really, there's so much lust in the body. There's desire and hunger, and it is primal. The body is primal. That's just what it is. It's the body. And, the animals have bodies. They don't, it's like they don't sit and meditate, but they have their primal instincts. And so it's like, if we can, in our love of the divine and love of God and our love to be in the spirit realm, remember that the primal urges in the body are actually lust for life and lust for aliveness, then maybe we could give ourselves permission to really explore a little bit there, which is going to feel like a lower vibration, right? Until we can bring it together. Because even if, I've been working with sound a lot lately, and, my husband's a musician. And so we've been playing with this, where it's like, like an opera singer who can sing really like those high angelic notes, sounds like an angel singing, right? And then it's like the drums or the like that kind of sound that's like a very bass. And it is going to feel, well, that's a lower tone, right? So it's going to feel sometimes like a lower vibration, but it's the ability to be able to just do this that then has us be able to really be in our potential of aliveness and connection and harmony. And then the shamanic aspects that you're talking about, which is to be able to really connect and feel things.
Yes, it's bringing because I think that in a lot of ways people can get ascend or be spiritual, but they're not connecting the body. It's only half the picture. You're not truly, we're not embodying the totality of who we are, and on all levels, right? Because we are body, mind, spirit, emotion. We're all of these things, and they all need to be respected and counted for, because they're all interrelated, and they all have their divinity and their expression of that. So,
and access to power for us. I mean, if we want to be empowered, we need all of it. It's not about us. To me, it's really not about ascending anymore. It's really about integration. It's the integration of our whole selves, of our multidimensional selves, are all of the aspects that make us up. And since we're talking about the feminine, it's like feminine, mother, earth, feminine, earth, body, mother, feminine, like just really to get that in such a like fundamental way, that to honor the feminine is to honor the body, because our body is the earth, and through honoring our bodies we honor the mother. It's like, I mean, when I got that, it was like
yeah, it's true. When awarenesses like that hit, and that's a big one, it's profound. Those are those aha moments, or those paradigm shifts that we can experience. And there's so many ways to illustrate that. I mean, we eat from Mother Earth. That nurtures our body. There's all these connections that are fairly mundane that we probably don't think about a lot, but one without the other doesn't work. They're all interdependent, and they're all interrelated, and they're all supportive of each other ultimately, right? So it's to begin to pull these pieces together and have a greater awareness about how we are truly connected and in community with Earth, with each other, with relationships, whatever the relationship is so important. And the relationship is, again, this relating is more of a feminine quality too. And I want to mention this one book. Peter Levine has a book that's called Waking the Tiger, I believe. And it's one of my favorite books. And I just wanted to mention it. Do you know the book? Have you?
I don't. I'm going to look it up.
Yes, it's amazing, because it talks about healing trauma. And what that basically does is he looks at animals and how, because they don't have the cerebral cortex and they're coming from where they are, they're able to process the adrenaline. They're able to express primally what's needed to clear that out after a chase or whatever.
Yeah.
And how we don't, and how we can. And I think that's just, that's a lot of what we're talking about. And that's the body, that's the clearing. I know, I feel it too.
Yeah. It's like we do it, and then as we do it, we also give permission to each other to do it. And, it's, someone may see you, walking down the street and say, I want what she has. How does she have it? And therefore be set on a journey to not only awakening, but aliveness. And which is, we're here, so we might as well get the most out of it, and it's so easy. Like I told you, I had jet lag yesterday pretty hard, because I just got back, and I was really trying to help myself. So I was doing my own embodiment practice on the floor, and I was moaning and groaning and moving and crawling, and when I was done, because I was so jet lagged and so tired, I looked out, and it was like everything was brighter. And I teach aliveness, and I practice aliveness, like the embodiment for the sake of aliveness. And then I realized it's not even just that I'm more alive. Everything else looks more alive because of the interconnectedness. So now that I've come alive, the colors become vibrant. It's like, oh, that tree's more alive. No, I'm more alive. So it's like, what are you looking at versus like, what place are you looking from? So it's just like, don't believe everything you think you see.
Right. And the operative word there being think, because the thing is, the knowledge can come in and does come in. It circumvents the mind. And this is more of what's happening too. This body knowledge, this knowing. from the ethers, from our womb, from our senses,
Yeah.
wherever it's coming from. This is knowledge, information coming through to inform us in each moment in relation to this, that, and the other. The mind is beautiful and important, but it's this compared to what is available to us. And I really think that's a lot of what this ascension and integration process is this becoming more aware of what's beyond this and just bringing it in and then letting it out. Like you said, in connection with others. You just don't know how you might affect someone, but you will affect them to the degree that you already are that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So we could do no greater service than to come into our own power, our own hearts, our own awareness of who we are. And I mean, that's something we can do.
Yes. And we must do, because I know, we're here, and everyone who's watching, like, if you're here, then the bell has already rung and you can't unring it. So it's like, might as well, do it. And I remember one time I was sitting with one of my teachers, like a while back, and I was like, oh, it's so hard. I was like going through something. I was like, why is it so hard? Can I stop it? Get off the effing train. And she was like, well, Anahita, not really. You've set on a path of awakening for quite some time now. And I was like, so is it this hard for everybody? And we were sitting in her office, and there was people walking around Santa Monica. And I was like, so is it hard for all those people? Like, are they going through it? She's like, no, they're not. She goes, not everybody sets to be awake. They're okay just living where they're living. They're okay living in the matrix. They're okay living the lives set forth by their ancestors. Just kind of like that same, that same routine, that same expression. They're okay with that. But if someone says, I'm interested in waking up and staying awake and alive and connected and shedding and shedding and shedding and continually releasing the untruths, then yeah, this is basically how it is. So I say that because, I'm just really wanting to acknowledge that we're all in this together, and it's never a straight line. It's never like neat and tidy. It's a messy, and then so much power and freedom comes from those messy, dark corners of like, I can't, or I want to give up or whatever, because then there's usually a beautiful opening. So just encouraging all of us to stay with it.
Yes, messy, dark corners. Oh yeah, that's. I've spoken a little bit about this with this ebb and flow, this peaks and valleys, of the spiritual awakening process that we're talking about. And one of my speakers had mentioned something about, when you get to that point of needing to surrender, and it can't even come from here, and it certainly can't come from here. It's a point that probably most of us will recognize. You recognize watching this, but it's more of a bodily thing. You might just throw your hands down. You might just scream. You might just go, whatever it is that naturally arises, because you're at that point. You're at a precipice where you're about to surrender into a new level. Her advice was to just be with that and allow space. It sounds so simple, but allow yourself space, to let this process come in and work its magic, and just be with that. It's nothing you can force or coerce through your mind, or you can do that, but I mean, it's
more painful.
It's much more
painful. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, I love that. And it's I'll just say this. I know we've been going for a while, but it's like, everything has contraction, expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction. And I've actually gotten really good at this over the last couple of years. I have to say, I'm really proud of myself. But a few years ago, I've known this obviously for a long time. And so I was, excuse me, I would go through the contraction state, and then I would go into the expansion state. And then I would always say to my husband, can you just remind me when I'm in that contraction state that it's always followed by an expansion state, so I can just relax into knowing that I'm being sort of refined. I'm in the refinery and becoming more myself. And then somewhere, I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago, it started to go into a little bit more of like, when I'm in the contraction, the time becomes less and less to the place where I can truly open my heart to the contraction as though it is the greatest love from the universe being given to me. And so it's like when I open into the pain and the doubt and the unworthiness and the fear and whatever's really coming up that I'm kind of working with, so the time has gotten much less. Like it starts and then I almost immediately now I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to open into this. Then it's just such a more graceful process. And that's kind of what you're saying. If you can give it space, then you can easily surrender into the next phase, which is like the expansion of like, so if we could just always remember that. And there's that Rumi poem, that I think it's Rumi. I don't think it's Hafiz. I think it's, now I don't remember who it is. One of those ancient Persian mystics that says, no matter who comes, open the door, greet them as your guest. I'm totally paraphrasing a gorgeous divine poem that no matter who comes, sorrow, sadness, or joy, just really let them in and have them be your honored guest. And so that's all we can do.
Yes, I know the poem too. I can't think of who wrote it, but I know
it's one of those guys. I'm almost embarrassed to be sitting here and talking about my Persian lineage, and I can't remember who writes this poem that I used to be able to recite at one point. But,
well, the most important thing is the message, and I think you got that out, so that's right. Good. Yeah, the expansion and contraction. That's a great way to end this conversation, because it's just kind of bringing it back full circle to everybody. That as we go along, these, call it a practical tool, call it wisdom, insight, whatever it may be, it's something, to really remember, because it's so fundamental as we go through all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all going through it together.
Yeah.
That's just, so we can let us be compassionate and gentle with ourselves and keep opening, trusting that it's all for the highest good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, like 2 minutes left. Is there anything else, or was that the beautiful last few words right there? Anything else you want to say?
Let's see. It's like, I just want to share this, something that became really clear for me recently. It's everyone who is in doubt about some aspect of their lives, whether it will turn out, whether it's health or finances or love or whatever it is. And I just want to say, you might as well stop pretending that that thing not being resolved somehow might mean that you are unworthy and separated from the divine. To just to really all of us to stop pretending that when we don't have the thing that we think we want in that moment, that somehow means we're like this lost child dressed in rags, abandoned, by Mother, Father, God. That it's in every moment, regardless of what we think we want, more health, more vitality, more money, partnership, more kids, anything, that we are just so loved and so exquisite. And so that's my journey, and that's my wish for all of you watching.
It's a beautiful wish. Truly. Yeah, playing small doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve anything.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking to that.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for being here in this conversation today. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. And I'm just going to, because I know you asked me to, I love you so much, sweetheart. It's just such a joy to be able to share in this way together. I think we've been waiting for it for a long time.
I think you're right.
Really sweet. And I know you had asked me to offer a gift to your tribe. So I was going to tell them what that is. They could get excited about it. Since we talked about the feminine, we talked about the body. It's a short embodiment practice for releasing the fear from your body and hopefully moving into some pleasure and ecstasy. So I hope that you grab it. It's just going to help you release some of the stuff stuck in your reptilian brain and in your body and come into receiving and breath. And that's my offering to you guys.
Beautiful offering and perfect for our conversation. That's awesome. Cool.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, love, and so many blessings to everyone watching.
Yes.
Oh, and one thing, if you're watching and you enjoyed, find me on Facebook. I love growing the global community, the global brotherhood and sisterhood. And so just say hi. You can find me easily.
Yes. Do you want to mention any websites or anything like that?
I think social media is the easiest way to find me. My website's anahitajoon.com. It'll be on this page.
Okay.
And once you can hopefully grab the embodiment practice, we'll stay connected.
Cool. Very cool. Yes. Yeah. Highly recommend connecting with her, everyone.
Oh, thanks, baby.
You're welcome. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us today. So wonderful to have you with us in this conversation and all that we're doing.
Yeah, really beautiful. Thank you for creating this, hon. It's really a gorgeous offering, and I know it's going to serve a lot of people.
Well, that is my biggest joy and happiness, to be able to be part of something like this. So
yeah, you're doing it.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I guess that's it for now, everyone. Lots of love, and we'll see you again soon. Bye. Bye, love.